Hi, welcome to our next module, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is much easier to understand if you've grasped the principles from cellular respiration. And so the important principles there are looking at how energy and matter are transformed and identifying where redox chemistry occurs and tracking matter and energy as you look at the processes of cellular respiration. And if you can do those things, photosynthesis will be much easier because you're going to do exactly the same thing. Let's start out with a few questions here. Let's just get an idea of your confidence. So how confident are you that you understand the actual purpose function? How confident are you about the function of photosynthesis? So just take a moment, look at this and answer in your head. There's obviously no right or wrong answer, just answer in your head. Okay, so obvious next question, what is the purpose of photosynthesis? The goal here is just to try and make sure that you are cognitively primed for receiving all of the complex mechanics of this. We've got to keep this rooted in the purpose. The purpose of photosynthesis is to make sugars. Many people come to photosynthesis with the misconception that the point of photosynthesis is to make ATP, and it's not. The point is to make sugars, and those sugars can then be used for construction, or they can be used to be broken down to synthesize ATP, or they could be used as storage molecules. They could be put into starch and that kind of thing. So what we've got to get to at the end of this is making sugar. Now we will make some ATP during this process, but that is not the point. The point of the chloroplast, if you want to think about it like that, is not to replace the mitochondria. Plants have both. They have mitochondria and they have chloroplasts. Chloroplasts make sugars. Mitochondria break sugars down and use the energy released to make ATP. Okay, so we've got to make sugars. So photosynthesis is going to convert carbon dioxide into sugar in the chloroplast. Where does that carbon dioxide come from? Okay, that carbon dioxide comes from the air. So if you look at a plant, look out your window and look at a plant, the majority of that plant is composed of cellulose and water, basically. So all of the carbon that has been used in the assembly of those plant cells has been converted from a gaseous form in the atmosphere into a solid form. And that's what photosynthesis is doing. It's taking carbon dioxide gas and making it solid. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. You can't do that. Bacteria can do it. Some bacteria can do it, and all plants, and then obviously the algae. We don't do it, and fungi don't do it. Protozoa, there are some protozoa that can do it too. So let's just start off with the big picture. We talked about cellular respiration extensively, and so that's over here on the right. So the function of cellular respiration is to take organic molecules, we talked about sugar, in the presence of oxygen, and to make carbon dioxide and water. Now that's not the point of cellular respiration. The point is to make ATP ultimately, using the energy that's released in this set of redox reactions that we talked about. So when we do this conversion of matter through redox chemistry, we liberate energy and we can use that energy to make ATP. So we can also say that we can take this molecule, which has got a relatively low level of entropy, a high G value, and as we convert it to carbon dioxide and water, the entropy goes up, the G value comes down in the products here, and the energy that's released can be used to make ATP, which your cells can use. So if we look at cellular photosynthesis, we can look at it really as functionally the reverse of cellular respiration. The carbon dioxide and water that you're releasing right now and that all organisms are releasing right now if they're oxidizing glucose, that carbon dioxide and water can be converted back into sugars. So there's this great recycling that goes on. You produce carbon dioxide, lots of organisms produce carbon dioxide, and then photosynthetic organisms take that and convert it back into sugars. And so we have plants making sugars, cows grazing, eating the sugars, you eating the cows, anyone else that consumes the cow, releasing carbon dioxide, plants taking the carbon dioxide and making sugars. And so you've got this cycle in ecosystems of matter. So matter is going to cycle round and round and round. Now energy, on the other hand, is going to flow through ecosystems. And so we think about it flowing through starting at the point of light and ultimately being lost to the universe in the form of heat. So energy is flowing through. Ecosystems recycle matter. So you gotta keep the big picture in mind here, otherwise you get lost in the details. So we're going to put this also in the context of redox chemistry. So I want to ask you a question about redox chemistry. I'll give you some information in the question. I'm going to read this one through. And I want to see if you can apply what you know about redox chemistry to what happens in photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, water is blank to provide electrons to blank carbon dioxide, which makes water the blank agent and carbon dioxide the blank agent. Let's fill in the words. Photosynthesis, water is doing what to provide? So it's providing electrons. If water is giving electrons, providing electrons, then water is what is it doing? Is it being oxidized? Is it being reduced? In photosynthesis, water is oxidized or reduced to provide electrons. If water is losing electrons, then it's being oxidized. In photosynthesis, water is oxidized to provide electrons to, now carbon is taking those electrons, so it's gaining electrons to reduce carbon dioxide, which makes water it's the giver of electrons, it makes water the reducing agent, and carbon dioxide is pulling electrons from the water, the oxidizing agent. So if you're okay with this, then you get the basics of redox chemistry as applied to photosynthesis. And we're going to keep seeing this kind of redox chemistry all the way through photosynthesis. Okay, so where does this process occur? We're staying focused on green plants. Now, in microbiology, you get into bacterial photosynthesis, and that's very different. We're going to talk about the chloroplasts. So where do we find chloroplasts? Any green part of a plant has chloroplasts. So we're looking at some English ivy leaves here. And then we see here's the leaf in cross section. So we've taken the leaf and we've cut it and we're looking at the side of the leaf. And you can see some tissues in here, not too important about what's going on right here now. Inside the cell, you've got a lot of chloroplasts. And then here's the structure of the chloroplast. I'm not going to talk about the structure of the chloroplast in too much detail, except in a moment, I'm going to look at the structure-function relationship in the chloroplast. You will want to go back to kind of like chapter 4 and look at the structure-function relationships, and I'm going to review them in a moment. And so here's the chloroplast. That's where all of this business of photosynthesis is going to occur. So let's take a look at the chloroplast, but we're going to put it in the context of the processes of photosynthesis. So we divide photosynthesis into 2 stages, and this makes it a little easier to study. There are the so-called light reactions, and then there's the Calvin cycle. If you're an older student, you may have heard of the dark cycles, but we don't use that verbiage anymore. We say the light cycle and the Calvin cycle, or the light reactions and the Calvin cycle. So both of these processes occur in different parts of the chloroplast, each place being well adapted to the function of the process that's occurring. So if we look at the light reactions, they occur on the thylakoid membranes. And so here is a stack of thylakoid membranes called a grana. And the function of these membranes is to harvest light energy. And that light energy is ultimately used to make some ATP and a molecule called NADPH. And we'll look at those in more detail. So those are the light reactions. They're going to use up water and produce oxygen, and obviously photosynthesis produces oxygen. We need green plants to produce oxygen. So those are the light reactions. Now the Calvin cycle, that occurs in the stroma. So if you don't know what the stroma is, back to chapter 4 and take a look at the structure of the chloroplast. So here's the Calvin cycle occurring in the stroma. The point of the Calvin cycle is to use up the ATP and NADPH from the light reactions to make sugar. Okay, let's go through that again. Light reactions occur at the thylakoid membranes. They collect light energy. They use water, they oxidize water like we just talked about, and they use those processes to make ATP and NADPH. We'll talk about NADPH in a little bit. The Calvin cycle in the stroma is going to take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and is going to reduce it with electrons from NADPH. It's going to use energy from ATP and is going to make us sugars. Okay, so 2 sets of processes, and then we'll have 2 separate videos, one dealing with the light reactions and one dealing with the Calvin cycle. Okay, so we'll wrap it up there. What are the major key points here? Major key points. Can you identify the redox chemistry well enough to to apply the photosynthesis, and then where does photosynthesis occur, and what are the two main processes. So we'll stop there, and I will see you in the next video.